Hello. You are listening to the Grieving Parents Sharing Hope podcast. We are here to walk with parents on their unwanted journey of child loss, guiding them to a place of hope, light, and purpose, not in spite of their child's death, but as a way to honor his or her life. And now, here is your host, author, speaker, and bereaved parent, Laura Deal.
Hi, thank you for being here with me today. Sibling loss is one that's not talked about very often, and it's even more difficult to find support for this than child loss. They're often called the forgotten mourners because most of the acknowledgement of loss is put on the parents, like, how's your dad doing? Or be extra good for your mom right now. Or maybe the emphasis is on the spouse and the children if they were married with their own family. Now, as parents, we get that, right? We're kind of pushed to the background a lot of times. If our adult child died and they had their, spouse and children, that's where the emphasis is put, where people really put their care and attention and try to comfort them. And a lot of times we as parents, we just feel like we're kind of tossed to the side and that our grief is not really acknowledged. And yet, I'll just put it out there. We know that, like when Becca passed, her husband was only 30 years old. We knew he would get remarried. We wanted him to get remarried, and he did. And so that part of his life was fulfilled again, having a wife, and he went on to have more children with her. And so, yes, I'm sure he misses Becca from time to time. And I'm sure this marriage is different than the other marriage with Becca because they're two different women. But that hole of having a wife has been filled, and we never get that. Our hole is there for the rest of our lives, not just that person, but having that child. And I don't have to tell you all this. So anyway, sibling loss runs very deep. I know our loss runs very deep, but sometimes we don't take the time to think about the siblings and how deep that goes. When someone loses a sibling, they lose both their past and their future. They don't have that sibling to reminisce about the family times growing up, and then they also have been robbed of their future with their sibling. I know when my sister passed a summer ago, I'm it now. And so we're not going to be taking care of my mom together as she ages and needs a little more help maybe, or just all of those things. I mean, we had plans to travel together, and it just, it's all destroyed when you lose a sibling, your past and your future. I know our past and future has been destroyed too, but our future, at some point, we thought we would go before our child. And I know we call that, being out of order, and that pain is horrific. It goes beyond words. But it's different with sibling loss. Because like I already shared with my sister, you plan a future with your sibling, and that future is taken from you. So today I have two guests who have both lost two siblings. Now, they also happen to be a father-in-law and daughter-in-law. We had a really good talk that's not only helpful just for sibling loss itself, but for parents who want to know how to help their other children with the loss of their brother or sister. What do I do? How do I help them? What do I not do? What do they need? What do they not need? And just like us, it's different. Some of it's based on the personality. We all grieve differently. They're going to have different needs. It's like, well, how do I figure that out? Well, let's go ahead and listen in. But before we do, let me introduce them to you. Bobby is married to his wife, Amy, and together they have 4 adult children. He serves in the Air Force and lives in the country near Wichita, Kansas, and is the founder of Sibling Lifeline. Bobby is deeply committed to service, both in uniform and in the community. He volunteers with Make-A-Wish, the Wichita Children's Home, and the Tragedy Assistant Program for Survivors, known as TAPS. He is also actively involved in leading fellow airmen into the local community through various youth outreach events. In his personal time, Bobby enjoys spending time with family and friends, walking trails, and playing sports. He carries the memory of his 2 brothers, Robert and Carl Bisterfield, both in heaven, which continues to shape his compassion for others and his dedication to serving those navigating grief and loss. Gabby is married to her husband Caleb, and together they share life with their 2 amazing cats, Miles and Willow, along with their dog, Murphy. She works in business management and lives in Edmond, Oklahoma. Gabby is the co-founder of Sibling Lifeline. Gabby enjoys spending time with family and friends, running, and traveling. She has a deep passion for serving others and volunteers with several nonprofit organizations. Having both a brother and a sister in heaven, Caleb Lillis and Jessica Haveman, Gabby brings compassion, empathy, and lived understanding alongside those navigating grief and loss. All right, let's go ahead and listen to my talk with these two. I know you're going to get a lot out of this. Well, welcome, Bobby and Gabby.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us.
You are welcome. Now, I've been looking forward to talking with both of you, and there's so much we can talk about, especially when it has to do with siblings. But let's just start out by hearing your stories about your siblings that are no longer here. You have both lost two siblings. So, Gabby, can you go ahead and start us out?
Yeah, so I lost my older brother, Caleb, in 2014. He had an unknown heart condition. It went undetected basically his entire life, and it's something you had to specifically test for. And so it just wasn't something in routine checkups that got tested for. And so he passed away in May of 2014 due to sudden cardiac arrest. And then my sister, Jessica, passed away in 2021 in February. She passed away from a drowning accident. So she was on a keto diet and it caused her to have a lack of nutrition in her body. And me and my family have a tendency of taking very hot baths. And so my sister had taken a bath and just got out of the bath too quickly, ended up passing out and drowning in the bathtub. So that's just a quick synopsis.
Yeah. So, Gabby, how old were you with both of them?
My brother, I was 12, and my sister, I was 19, basically 20. It was right around my birthday when she passed.
Okay. And were they both older than you?
They were. So both of them are my oldest two siblings that have passed. I'm actually the youngest. So.
Okay. So do you have any other siblings?
I do. I have two living siblings, my two older brothers, Noah and Jonah. And they are both, Noah is 10 months older than me. So we're very close in age. And then my other brother, Jonah, is 4 years older than me.
Okay. All right. Bobby, can you go ahead and share your siblings with us?
Yes, so I'm of a family of five. So I have two older sisters, and then I have two brothers that are both in heaven. And the first one, he died 5 years before I was born. He died in a gun accident. So when he was almost 3 years old, he climbed to the top of a refrigerator and fell down with a handgun, and it discharged and shot him in the head. And my mom didn't have a car at the time. So she ran in the kitchen, scooped him up, and ran out to the street, found a passerby, took her to the hospital with my brother, and then he entered the arms of Jesus in heaven at the hospital. And later on, just growing up, he was really a picture on our family wall, and my parents just told me, he's your brother and he's in heaven. And I asked my mom when I turned 18 if she would tell me that story, and she did. And it was just such a tragic story to hear, but I needed to hear it, and I never asked her to retell it again. But I was thankful that I did get to hear.
Can I clarify? So you just knew you had a brother that died, and you didn't know what happened until you were 18, and you asked your mom?
That's correct.
Okay. Wow. And I can see why she didn't want to talk about it. Wow.
Now, it's a tragic story, and it was very hard for her to get through. And I knew, afterwards that was the last time I would ask her to tell that story, but it was something that I needed to hear. And so my second brother, he died in May of 2020 by suicide. And he was 10 years younger than I was. And so he's my younger brother. Just a great brother to have, but struggled later on in his life with alcoholism and also depression, and a lot of early on family dynamics, I believe, played a part in leading to that suicide and other things in life that happened along the way. But in short, those are the two stories of my two brothers that are in heaven.
Then how old were you when your brother died by suicide?
So at that time,
you were an adult, right?
Correct. At that time, I was 45.
Okay. And how old was he?
He was 35.
Okay. Now, especially on this podcast episode, we really want to give a voice to the siblings because I don't, you've heard all the sayings, the silent mourners, the forgotten mourners, and it really is true. And so I want us to be able to talk about things that we deal with or things that you deal with that we may not think about as bereavers, as the parents who've lost our child, but sometimes we're so caught in our own grief that we don't think about what you're going through.
Mhm.
So I'm going to ask some questions that come my way from parents who
Mhm.
want to know how to help their other children or talk about things that concern me that I hear from other bereavers and their own pain and grief, and they don't realize how deeply it's affecting their other children. So, first of all, let's just dig right into this. How did the way your parents grieve affect you? And I'm guessing each loss was different on how it affected them, therefore, how it affected you.
Yeah, absolutely. So when my brother passed away, again, I was very young. So that is also was a different process for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so both of my siblings were my half siblings that passed, just for some context. So my brother was my dad's son, and my sister was my mom's daughter, and they were not related.
Wow. Okay.
Um, and so when my brother passed away, I was the only girl like living in the house. So it was me and my other two brothers. And my dad kind of swept that grief under the rug because I can't even understand, what that was like for him. And so for me, for a long time, I struggled with not wanting to bring it up to him because I felt like if I talked about it, it was causing him to relive the trauma and
Mm-hmm.
the grief again. And I didn't want to do that to him. So for a long time, up until my sister passed away, we did not talk about it. Like it was a
Mm-hmm.
very hush hush topic. And neither did my brothers. My brothers didn't want to talk about it. My dad didn't want to talk about it. So it kind of left me very alone in my grief. I didn't really have anybody I could go to. And then just also not really understanding it and not talking about it caused me to have delayed grief, which I didn't realize until my sister passed away. And once my sister passed away, my mom is a recovering alcoholic. And so I was worried whenever my sister had passed, it was going to cause her to spiral. And so for me, it was really important then to have conversations with her and talk to her about what she was feeling and what she was going through. But when I lost my sister, it was almost like I lost my brother again.
Hmm.
Because I realized some of those emotions and those feelings that, for one, I just didn't understand. But for two, that I had never processed, I was reprocessing with my sister. And so being able to talk about it with my mom and like hear the really hard feelings she was having and the grief and the pain caused me to realize that a lot of how I was feeling and not about not wanting to bring it up to my brother was my own grief. Like, or bringing up my brother to my dad was my own grief.
Uh-huh.
In reality, I think I should have talked to him about it more. So it caused me to go back and have those conversations with my dad and kind of dig in to his grief. And so nowadays we can talk about it a little bit more. It's still hard for him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was interesting because it caused me to kind of grieve two people at the same time.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, if I'm hearing you right, are you saying that kind of the realization that your dad, I guess from a sibling point of view with a parent
Mhm.
that you can tell is obviously very struggling, maybe not talking about it, because that is one thing I hear a lot is that they don't want to make the parent hurt even worse than they already
Mhm.
do. So, if I'm hearing you correctly, one thing that you're suggesting is that a lot of times, I mean, we're already thinking about it. I'll just say it from a parent.
Right.
We're always thinking about it. And so, talking about it doesn't make it worse for most of us. And that's
Yeah,
something that you've discovered in this journey.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. But on the other hand, us as parents, we can't force our child to talk about it either. Why don't you talk about your brother? You never talk about your brother. You never talk about your sister because we all just grieve so differently.
Right.
So a lot of it is just, oh my goodness, it's grace. It's so
Yeah.
much grace.
100%. Because I don't think, like, I don't know that at the age that I was when my brother passed, for one, I didn't understand it enough at that time. So I think even being older allowed me to understand what happened even better and kind of go back to be ready to have those conversations. So I think me being older just allowed me to reprocess some of that as well. And kind of it took me my own time, and along with my sister passing away, to realize, hey, this is something we've got to talk about and we can talk about, and that I needed to talk about, but I knew that my dad needed to too. And same with my mom.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. Bobby, how do you think that affected your family dynamics and how your mom raised you? Do you think she was very overprotective? I mean, how did that, because you didn't know your mom obviously before your first brother died, so you can't give any changes there, but looking back, do you think, or has your mom ever talked about maybe how it affected her and how she raised you?
Just from what I saw, and that's a great question. As far as I may go back and talk to my mom about that. I don't know if I specifically asked her that question if she raised me, any different because of my brother's death. So I really think with that generation, I'll call them the older generation of that time, where like your baby boomer generation. I really feel like in my case, and what I've heard in other people's cases too, is they tended to take that pain and emotion and bury it
Mm-hmm.
and just press on, right? Just push on in life. And there may be some positives to that in some cases, but I think in the long run, I think most people realize that that's probably not the best thing to do. But I really think that's what they did with my first brother's death. Like I said, his name, his story was really never talked about. He was a picture on the wall. And so what that tended to have me do growing up is, 16 to 25, I think I really struggled in part because of that. My parents were also divorced when I was 16, but just dealing with my brother's death. And, when you're talking to other teenagers and friends at that time, who really wants to talk about death? So just not having an
Mm-hmm.
outlet of under somebody who understood what I needed to talk about and work through. So I think that was crucial. But I tie that together with my second brother's death. I think my mom was more open to talking about it. And she also attended a while we're waiting retreat with my sister, who, lost a son in 2007. But I say that to say that, I feel like from the first death and then almost, 50 years later to the second death, that, the second son that she lost, she was more open in talking about it and seeking that support. I think that's crucial to be able to, work through that pain and grief that you're in. Last thing I want to say on that, if possible, is, telling your surviving child that she would have felt the same way if it would have been them. Well, I think we've heard that before, but I think that's really crucial. I've talked to several parents about that. I think for some, it's like a light bulb coming on, like, I haven't done that. I haven't thought about that, even though we know that they would feel the same way. Those parents would. But I think for that child to be able to hear that is crucial for their well-being and understanding that, hey, my sibling died and is in heaven and they can never get any better, any worse. They're kind of in a pedestal at that point. Where do I fit in the picture out here? Would I have been treated like this if it would have been me? So
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because my second daughter did come to me at one point and she interpreted my grief for her older sister as I thought the wrong one died. I was just shocked and appalled that she would think that, but that was how she was interpreting my grief. And so that is something that I do try to make parents aware of, that yeah, it's a wow, it just really shocked me when she said that. Yeah. Can I ask Gabby, what was it like to become older than your older sibling?
It's really weird, is the best way I can describe it. It was really hard for me with my brother because I was older than him before my sister passed away. So I think you make a great point asking that. So thank you for asking me about it. Whenever I realized I was older than my brother when he passed away, again, he was about 20 when he passed. Whenever I got to that age is when I kind of started reprocessing what had happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, on top of losing my sister pretty quickly around that same time frame, was a lot all at once. But it's weird because you think of them, as your older sibling, and they're here, they're older than you, they're your protector. Or for me, that's how I felt about my brother. And then to be older than them just felt like I was doing life without them, and it made it reality to me that I was older than they would ever be. So it was really hard for me to process that. But also, I think that was the start of me kind of going back and reprocessing my grief, but then also with my sister, realizing those emotions that I had kind of suppressed and pushed down because I didn't talk about it with anyone. So that was a great question. Thank you for asking about that.
Yeah, well, I just the same daughter that I just mentioned. I was at a women's retreat as one of the speakers, and she got a hold of me. She wanted to find her sister's birth certificate because she wanted to know to the exact minute when she was
Wow.
going to be older than her older sister. And it was like, bye, ladies, I'm going home. I
Yep.
didn't realize it was going to affect her that deeply. To count it down to the last minute of when she was going to be older than her older sister. I think it just really, really rattled her. The boys, not quite so much, but for some reason, the sister that just really hit her. And I think, you talked about the reprocessing because I think then you realize how old they were. And it's like, this is how old my sister was or my brother was. And it's like, wow, I don't know. There's just something about that. I would
Yeah.
imagine it would cause you to reprocess that whole thing again.
Yeah, because when my brother passed was that same exact time that my sister passed. So whenever I was 20, so the age that my brother
Right.
was when he passed was literally the same exact time when my sister passed away. And I had that realization whenever my sister passed that I was like, oh, I just turned 20. My sister just passed, and I am now the same age as my brother when he passed away. And that realization, I think that that's crucial that you talked about that, about, just realizing that you're the same age that they were, that they passed, and that this is what life was like for them and things like that. It's kind of hard to go back to. And
Yeah,
to
I
relive.
know. I know my siblings, a lot of them, because Becca passed when she was 29. And my other kids, it's the realization of how young she really was. Because when they were younger, 29 seemed kind of old, but not when they each hit 29, it was like, wow, Becca was so young
Yeah.
when she passed. So it's just really, something to process. So, as parents, we find ourselves grieving our child at those really significant events, causing us to reprocess the loss. And I know it's got to be the same with you. But do you find, we were just talking about the ages, do you find it's often based on the different views of your age? Like the greater understanding of the loss now hits you harder at these events, like weddings, or, it's like my siblings should be there, maybe special holidays or whatever. Can you just talk about what that's like for you in these special events that your siblings aren't there for?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I can specifically trace it to my wedding. I got married in 2022, and that was really hard for me. For one, I didn't have any of my siblings at my wedding for for a lot of different reasons. But so in general, not having any of them with me was really hard. But I think that that's kind of when it hits me the hardest is kind of around those big milestones of realizing that they're never going to get to meet them or never going to get, to see them and live the life that I lived with them or the way that, I remember them. So my wedding was a big one, but also just any of their, like the death anniversaries for me are hard. I always talk about the month of February is really hard for me. My sister passed in February, and my brother was born in February. So I know when February rolls around, that it's really hard for me. My birthday is also in February. So I kind of deal with that guilt of like a little bit of survivor's guilt in the way of like, February is a hard time for me and I get to live and see, this February and this year,
Right,
but they didn't.
right.
So for me, my wedding was one, but I think specifically, I know that the month of February is always going to be hard for me.
Bobby, I want to ask you the same question, but I also want to just mention, I'll throw this question in there too. Have you found that your own birthday is difficult with your sibling out there?
I don't know if I have found it as difficult, with my own birthday as far as not having there. I mean, it is difficult, but it isn't something I think that I'm dreading, as far as my birthday. No. And I don't know. I mean, I do feel the dates, right? When the date that they passed on, I can, like most people will feel it coming up. You can just feel it in your body,
Mm-hmm.
a month out before. I think the month of July is probably the date for me. Two brothers that were born in July, and then a nephew that died in July. And so
Mm.
the month of July for me is probably the month that I think about it the most. So I think one other thing is I get along with my sisters great, and I love them. It's not the same having that sibling with your sister as it is with that bond with your brother. And I think two things. I think one, never knowing what that relationship would be, with my
Mm.
first brother who, was never alive when I was alive, who died before I was born.
Bobby, are you the oldest? I did ask that already, but remind me.
No, I'm in the middle. Well,
Okay. But it would have been
let's
an older brother for you. I mean,
right. I'm sorry, I reframed that. So I'm the second youngest. So my brother would have been the oldest.
right.
Then my two sisters, and then myself, and then my youngest brother.
So you think about what it would be like to have an older brother.
Right. Now that older brother, how maybe family dynamics would have been different with him. Who knows? Those are the what if questions. And then just not having the younger brother that I grew up with, and you know, did a lot of brotherly things together that bonded us and had some of the same
The things that
interests.
you don't tell until you're a lot older, your parents don't find out
Right.
sitting
Exactly.
around the table.
Exactly. Exactly, those type of things, and not having that, like you're talking about family dynamics, losing that family dynamic piece of the puzzle. And then you just, again, I love my sisters, but we never had the same relationship that I did with my brother.
Mm-hmm.
And while I'm glad that they are able to go, they're close in age, so they do a lot together. And I don't have that. I wish I had it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not um, the circumstances I'm in. So, I deal with that. But that's if you're talking about things that I miss that relationship and the things that we talked about and did that were, a brother to brother relationship that doesn't always translate to a brother to sister relationship.
Right, right. Yeah.
So,
Well, I wouldn't know that. I never had brothers. I always wished I had an older brother until I had three boys, and then I was glad I didn't have an older brother.
Mhm.
So, yeah. So, have you felt sort of lost or pushed aside at times, maybe with your parent focusing more on the one who's not there than the ones who are there? Is that something either one of you went through?
I don't think personally I did. I think Bobby spoke to it really well about kind of my dad was very much of like pick up and carry on. Like we
Mm-hmm.
just picked up and carried on with our life. And so I never felt like my brother was on a pedestal. I almost wish that he would have been more in a way,
Mm,
because I think that that would have helped all of us, my brothers and my dad, process some of that a little bit more, but we just carried on. And then when my sister passed, I didn't feel that way either. I think, my mom was very like heartbroken and she had some, it was in the depth of grief and everything, but she never made me feel like my sister's loss was more or more than being on earth with me or being present with me.
mm-hmm.
Um, but I think that that's because she needed to talk about it and she needed to, have someone with her to process. So having that for both of us, I think, was really what started both of our kind of our grief processing when my
Mm-hmm.
sister passed, was that we had each other to talk to about
Now,
what we were
you had
feeling.
said your mom was an alcoholic
Mhm.
previously, and you were concerned about this kind of throwing
Yeah.
her back into that. Do you feel like you kind of took on some of the burden of that, that some of it was your responsibility to keep her from that?
Ab- Absolutely. My mom is very easy to read whenever she does start drinking. But with anything like that, and my automatic thought was that
Mm,
that was what was going to happen. And so, in a way, you kind of walk on eggshells because I didn't want to bring up too much and then it caused her to almost spiral. So I just did what she was ready to do and what she was ready to talk about. And if we were going to do something really difficult, like picking out the outfit my sister was going to wear in her casket for her viewing, we did it together so
mm-hmm.
that she was never alone going through these really difficult times. She always had someone to support her and listen to her if she wanted to talk about
Mm-hmm.
those feelings. So that was
Yeah.
important to me because My brothers went with me, obviously, but me and my mom have a very different relationship
Right.
than like her and my brothers do. So I knew that like she needed me to be strong for her in a way. And I didn't mind carrying that burden for her.
Yeah,
So
that's interesting that you say you didn't mind that, because I know you guys do sibling retreats and you guys talk to siblings a lot.
Mhm.
And so, Bobby, I'm guessing this you didn't that didn't really affect you either, because you were an adult with your own family when your brother died. Did you experience any of that kind of being pushed aside, that your brother got the limelight or was more important for a while?
I think you're definitely right. I mean, there is a stark comparison between myself and Gabby, as far as the timeline there. I was just thinking like relinquishing the empathy and support that was coming from other people. And I know not every sibling feels this way. I was happy to relinquish it, right? And I'll explain it two ways. On one hand, I didn't really feel like I desired the empathy or the support. I was happy to see my mom, my parents receive that honestly. And then I think part of that may have been, and I know it's a different circumstance because he didn't die when I was alive, but I never really received it when I was growing up anyway. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but just it was never discussed and it didn't come up a whole lot, in conversation. Like I said, when it did, when I was a teenager, when I did actually try to talk about it, no one really wanted to in my
Mhm.
peer group or, those around at the time. So
Right.
I just kind of let it go. And that was one of the things too. I never put a picture really of him up in my own house, when I became an adult. And I kind of honestly took the example of my parents and just, buried the memories and of what I had been told and never put his picture up. And it was really until my second brother went to heaven that I put a picture of my first brother up and actually processed his grief or my grief for
Mm-hmm.
his death. And, now I've got a picture of both of them up, obviously. But it just let me honor him more than I ever had my entire life and let me know that it was okay to honor him. And it wasn't something to, just bury and not worry about and just push down and just, let him be the picture on my mantle and talk about him. Not just have him there as a picture, but to talk about him. Because his story, even though he was only 2.5 years old, is important to talk about. So yeah,
And
I
he
was I
was
was
your
happy to
brother, even though you
relinquish.
never got to meet him. And
Yeah,
you will
100%.
someday.
Yeah, I will someday. And like I've said before, to Gabby, just he has one professional picture that was taken, and when you look into his eyes in that professional picture, you see, the eyes mirror the soul, and you see a child, who was ready to get after life. He had a positive spirit about him, and you could tell he was going to do great things here on earth. And I have no doubt, you know, he's doing great things for God even now. But
Hmm.
so that's what I remember most about him is those pictures and just the life that was in his eyes.
So, do you hear from other siblings quite often that they do feel like they kind of get pushed aside, or, parents are building a shrine in the house and they just feel like they're non-important anymore?
yeah.
They're both,
I'm
you
gonna
can't
make a
see it, but
comment
they're
and I
both
know
just
that
like
this is what
nodding
he's
and
gonna
raising their
say
hands
too.
vigorously.
I'll make the comment and then I'll let Bobby expand on it because I know that this is probably what he's gonna say too. One of the examples that we use a lot when we talk about things that siblings have said to us is I feel like I'm living in my parents' grief.
Yes.
Um, so like feeling like, their sibling is on a pedestal and that, they're the most important and I totally understand that they're grieving. But I'll make the statement of, we do get that a lot of I'm living in my parents' grief. And I'll let Bobby expand on that because I know he has something to add to it.
Now you really have said most of it right there. I mean, that's really what I was going to say is I've had several of them, say that exact same phrase. I'm living in my parents' grief. They wrote it on our chalkboard as something they wanted to emphasize. So one of the stories, she was a child of 5, and when her sister went to heaven, she gave her parents grace in their grieving, and they worked together on it. But after over a year, she was explaining it like they weren't emotionally connected to her or her siblings as they were before, and understandably, but to the point where, like she said, her dad would sit on the porch swing and stare out in the distance for hours on a continual basis. Her mom would talk about almost a daily basis of, I want to be in heaven, can't wait till this day comes. And while I totally, to the best of my ability, I totally understand that. There's a lot of days I feel like me and Gabby talk about, we would love to be in heaven too with our siblings and the people that we miss. I think it's being able to take a look around you and see the family, the friends, the purpose that God still has for you here, even as hard as some days that is to see, beyond the pain of knowing that your loved ones in heaven waiting for you. You've got to be able to look at those, even for siblings, got to look at the other siblings. For parents, you've got to look at the other children and realize they need you. They need the best version of yourself, even though you are now in a new normal and you will never step back into that person that you were. That's fine. Communicate that, but realize that they need a parent. And for siblings, they need the siblings. You can't do the same thing to the other siblings too. So it goes for them also. But yeah, I definitely hear that, and we see that, and they're definitely heard.
Yeah, I know for one thing that, when I was thrown into this world of being a parent who's lost a child, one of the things that I discovered that I didn't know, and it's, our grief really doesn't fit a pattern, that whole, 5 stages of grief. That's Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and that was based on someone who was terminally dying. It was not for somebody grieving someone dying. And so we have to tell people that all the time. But there tends to be a pattern for parents that for a lot of us, the second year is even worse than the first year. And it's like, I hate to tell parents that because they think, how can this possibly be worse? But I think for the parents, the numbness starts wearing off. And like for me, I thought, okay, I've been through 1 year without Becca. This next year is going to be better. And it was worse. And I think because I thought I had been through everything once, so I know what it's going to be like, but the numbness had worn off. And so the reality was like in my face that she really wasn't here. So, and I think that shocks a lot of us, that second year can be even darker than the first year in some ways. So that makes it even harder for us. But I have to say, I do know that there are parents, like you said, I just want to go be with my child. It's kind of like the Jesus leaving the 99 for the one. It's like our heart just wants to go be with the one. I know you guys are here, but I want to go be with the one. And yet it's almost like in our head, we know it doesn't make sense. It's like, oh, I knew it didn't make sense. I mean, I had 4 other children, Becca's daughter, another granddaughter, my husband. I had an international children's ministry, but I just wanted out of here because the pain was so intense. But I think to actually verbalize that to our other children is traumatic. Even though we may feel that way, I think to actually verbalize that, I just want to go, I don't want to be here. I have a friend who lost his only sibling, and then he lost his dad, and then the mom got really sick, and she was like, I'm out of here. And he's like, don't you want to stay for me? And she honestly said, no, I don't. I mean, and this is years later, and he's still just a mess because his mom outright said, no, it's too painful. And he's like, I'm not enough. And it's like, I just want out of here. And she did die within a couple weeks of that. So, that is something that we really, as parents, we really have to be aware of. I know that I hear from a lot of siblings, they say that they not only lost their sibling, but they lost their parents.
Yeah, we've heard that before too. And yeah, one other thing I'll say is I don't want my daughter or my son's absence to be greater than my child's presence. And again, that kind of goes along with what we're talking about. Where should that priority be? And it's easy, I think, for all of us to put that priority on that child that's in heaven because they're not with us anymore. And boy, do we long to be with them and have them back. But I think it's knowing that they're not behind us, they're ahead of us.
Yes.
That's where we're all looking forward to being. But let's, for the people that are here with us, let's ensure that, we're taking them with us and that we're doing the best we can as parents or siblings to ensure that they are the strongest faith, believing Christians that we can influence them to be. But we can't do that when we're not allowing ourselves to be purposeful for God and not allowing
Hmm.
Him to work through us.
Yeah, I mean, we're still parents, and we still need to be there for our other kids. We do. We need to find ways and ask God for the grace and the strength to be there for our other children. Yeah, it's hard for all of us. And so to come together as a family, I think is so important. Do either of you, especially after you have lost two siblings, do you fight the fear who's next?
I'm laughing because yes, I do. And that's something I talk about all the time. I always say that I have like an irrational fear of death, is the way that I describe it to people. It's not something that necessarily like hinders my day to day, but it is something that I consistently think about. And it's almost like I constantly live in a state of like processing grief in a way of like if I got a phone call, I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
be surprised. I think that also comes with maybe the way that I lost my siblings in like a very quick and like
Mm-hmm.
manner that has
Totally
also,
unexpected. Yeah.
yeah, like escalated that for me. So I can say personally that's something that I have dealt with, but I don't let it hinder my day to day as far as like what my husband goes out and does or my parents go out and do. It's just a thought that lives in the back of my brain
Mm-hmm.
with everything, unfortunately.
Almost
But
like an undercurrent.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Bobby, is that
Yeah.
something you deal with?
So it is in a way. So it's honestly, it's not something like Gabby, a lot like Gabby. I don't fear it, and it
Mhm.
doesn't drive my day-to-day actions or inaction. But it is something. I'm kind of like Gabby. If I get a phone call or something where you get that feeling of like, why are they calling at this time and this place?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
I just expect the worst, and
Yeah.
when it's not, I take a sigh of relief, but
Mhm.
it's just something that you already are attuned to because you've gone through those unfortunate incidents, those situations in life. So unfortunately, sometimes you just expect the worst, and I hate living that way sometimes, but I think how we've been reprogrammed, I guess you call
I was
it.
gonna say we're
Yeah.
almost wired that way now.
Yeah,
Something
wired that
it's
way.
like it's like we're rewired. I know I had a cousin that died by suicide when she was a very young adult. And then it was like, I think 8 months later, her older sister was killed. She was a pedestrian and he ran her over, was so drunk he didn't even know he'd hit her. And their younger brother, they found later he had written on his calendar, who's next.
Mhm.
And he was fairly young. He was probably like maybe 10 or so at the time.
Mhm.
So that really did affect him that way. How common is it for a sibling to want to make up for that lost sibling, like buying two Mother's Day gifts, or, I feel like I have to make up for my other sibling not being here? Do you hear that very often?
I don't know that I hear about it in that way, as far as like buying another gift or things like that. In the context of like holidays and like Mother's Day and that, I know that we get a lot of like feeling like the traditions aren't the same and that
Yes.
process is not the same, and that it's very different and it won't be the same. I think that's just the reality of losing someone that you love is things won't be the same. I can't remember a specific time that I've heard that from a sibling, but Bobby, is there a specific time you can think of that I'm not?
Yeah, I don't think I've heard that yet, and I'm sure that we will at some
Yeah.
point. It
I,
would not
I brought
surprise
it
me at
up
all.
because I have had someone tell me
Yeah.
that they,
I know.
for like the first 2 or 3 years, and they didn't even realize that's what they were doing for a
Mhm.
while. It
Yeah,
was,
so
they
like
were trying to be that sibling for their mom or for their parent.
that first year that my brother, when Carl, who took his own life, for that first year, I probably doubled or tripled my visits to my mom
Hmm.
and did things that I normally, you know, wasn't doing, or things that I knew my brother was doing for her. It could be the simple things like cleaning out the shop. Because that was a shop that he used and enjoyed out there at mom's house. And so I tried to keep up some of the things that he was doing for like that first year or two. And so really double, tripling my efforts. And I knew what I was doing. It wasn't something, I was trying to
Mm-hmm.
make up for, but I was just like trying to fill the gap of what was there, and then, slowly tapered back to my normal routine of what I was doing before.
Mm-hmm. So, can we talk about the parent who wants to include their child who has passed in every event and they want, like, okay, let's go to the cemetery now, or let's, and let's have Bobby wants to talk about this because pressuring our children because we want to make sure that they remember their sibling.
Yeah, so I think we've talked about that before. It's a delicate subject to talk about,
Mhm.
because you're going to have some parents, and this first one I think is the right thing, in my opinion, is to allow that day to be your child's day. It's their wedding, it's their graduation, whatever it may be. Realize as much as you may want that day to incorporate your child that isn't here any longer, it's that child's day, the one
Mhm.
who's actually here celebrating it. And that is a hard thing, I believe, for a parent to do.
Mhm.
I think it's a tough thing for a parent to do. But take, for instance, I'm just giving an example. You have a child that is graduating, and maybe one of the parents is like, are you going to walk up to the stage and with a picture or something of your sibling, with you or on your gown or whatever it may be? No, I'm not doing that. And then, the parent may be upset, right? But that child has a picture of their sibling underneath their cap, when they're graduating. Whatever that child wants to do, to honor, trust me, they're thinking about it too. They're thinking about
Mhm.
their sibling when
Yes.
those days come, and they will honor them in the way that they feel not only is appropriate, but for them gives them their day also. And
Mhm.
so they're thinking about it just as, almost, I can't say just as much as the parent. I'm not going to say that, but they want to honor them too, but let them honor them in the way that they want to, not what the parent may think that they need to do for that day that may take away from it, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
I mean it's a bittersweet day for all of us, whatever the event is. It's a very bittersweet day for all of us. And I think as parents we have to be careful not to take it personally.
Yes.
If we have a child that, no, I don't want my sister's picture in the front row at the wedding, or,
Mhm.
something like that, or standing up next to me because she would have been my maid of honor, so we're going to plant a picture. If the child wants to do that, great. But for us to pressure them to do that is just we can't do that. I like you said, it's hard. It's very, very hard, but it is our child's day. It's their event, and it needs to be about them and what they're comfortable with. We can't fix each other. We
Mhm.
just we it's so much about communication and grace. Unless we have lost a sibling. Now, I lost my one and only sibling, my sister, last summer, and yeah, it's hard. It's really, I'll tear up thinking about it. It's still very fresh for me. We had all these
Mhm.
plans we were going to do together, growing old together as sisters and taking
Mhm.
care of my mom together, all that stuff. But I'm sure you guys have heard the saying, to lose a parent is to lose your past, and to lose a child is to lose your future, but to lose a sibling is to lose your past and your future.
Mhm.
And I get that now
Mhm.
Mhm. That's a lot to think about.
because you don't have that sibling that you can
Yeah.
talk about the past with.
Right.
And you don't have the sibling that you were going to bury your parents together. Or, I think of, for me, I feel bad for my mom because she had 3 summers ago, she had had both of us come over and go through all of her things. She was downsizing, and someday she'll won't be on her own unless the Lord takes her quickly. And so she had all these colored dots, and so I would put one color on anything I wanted of my mom's when she went, and my sister put a dot of another color. And then if there was something we both wanted, it got a third color, and we'd sort it out when mom was gone. And now my mom has all these dots on her stuff, and I'll get it all. I mean, it's like she sees these dots, and my sister won't isn't here. So I think for us parents, we do have to be aware that siblings face a deep, deep loss. And I want to reiterate something, Bobby, you said that our kids are in our future, our siblings are in our future.
Mhm.
And that's one thing that I love to tell parents is that you really aren't getting further and further away from your child. You're getting closer and closer to them again.
Yeah.
And that perspective really helps. Can I just ask you, before we wrap it up here, how has the loss of your sibling affected your faith?
I think for me, initially, whenever I'll just kind of combine them both at the same time. Whenever my sister passed away and it reopened that grief with my brother, I struggled for a little bit of time. I always leaned on the Lord, and I always went back to the Lord for comfort and to pray, and that wasn't something that I lost throughout that, but I struggled for a little bit with, well, when my sister passed, she left behind 3 children. And so for me, that was the hardest part of it.
Mm,
In the beginning was processing what this is like for her children. And
mhm,
that was really hard. And so I kind of struggled with those why questions with that for them. But then also, I was kind of trying to find any sort of resource that I could. I was looking for other retreat groups or, a book at that time or a YouTube video for one that was centered around faith. And it was really hard to find any of those things. And so for me, I was trying to find a community of people that had lost a sibling that wanted to talk about it.
very hard
But
to
in a,
do.
yes,
Hmm.
but with a faith perspective. And so it made it really difficult for me because I kind of felt alone in my grief up until, I knew Bobby whenever my sister passed. So I will say Bobby was a really great source for me because we related to each other in our grief.
Hmm.
So, and, obviously Bobby is very faith centered. And so I think whenever I was struggling and really going through, right when my sister passed away, Bobby was sending me podcasts and sending me encouragement. And that really helped me to have someone that understood what I was going through, but that was encouraging me to lean on the Lord and trust my faith.
Hmm.
Um, and lean on that was incredibly helpful
Hmm.
during that time.
I'll just touch a little bit about back on what you said though about 'cause I just have been able to sit here and think about that, losing, the past, the future, and totally I relate to that because you can't get that from anyone else.
Hmm.
You can't replicate that with even your best of friends or even your spouse. It just doesn't resonate 100% when you are talking about, a certain family dynamic or
Mhm.
situation, whatever it may be, positive, negative, it's not going to resonate with anyone else. And so
Right.
now you have lost that piece while you're here for the rest of your life here in the flesh body. I find myself sometimes like every once in a while, just, talking to him, you know,
Mm.
isn't that a
Mhm.
really nice truck,
Yes.
or whatever,
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
he really liked trucks and vehicles, different, so you find yourself, sometimes doing that
Mhm.
just to keep the conversation going with your sibling or maybe even with your child. But, no, back to the question, how has it affected faith? My first brother dying, I think just looking back on it, I think it brought me closer to God, just growing up and having that, even though I didn't know much about it, I knew my brother was in heaven, and it made me think about heaven. It made me think about, you know, eternal life. It made me think about God, and so I think it gave me that kind of perspective, whether I knew it or not, growing up, to be more inclined to think in that direction. Later on, I've always been, I felt like a faith driven, compassionate person. And I feel like when my second brother went to heaven, it only increased it. And I know all of us have different gifts or different things that we have in life. And you think, how can it get any better than this? Or how can this, increase anymore? And after that, it increased. And I find different things that even happened since then along the way that have increased my faith, increased my compassion, empathy, whatever it may be, perspective. But for me personally, I look at what was, is, and will be, and I look, at this life as a short time, in the flesh, it's a blink of an eye. And when we're in that spiritual body and we're looking back on our time here, it is important, but this isn't our eternal home. This isn't where we build it. And the relationships are important here. Our purpose is important, but I'm going to take every moment that I have going forward, that I have left. I am not going to let Satan define the end of my life
Yes.
based off on grief or anything else, fear, anxiety, depression, whatever those things may be, even though we battle them. But we battle them with Jesus, and that's the only way to win that war, the gospel armor that he's asked us to put on, Ephesians chapter 6. But I just say that all to know that when I'm in my spiritual body and I'm looking back with that full cognizance of what was and is and will be, it's going to be a beautiful day. And I know that God is going to make all things perfect, and I trust that all things will be right, and we will be in a place that, again, we're looking forward to. We're looking forward, not backwards. And I've pulled down that rearview mirror in life many times for different reasons, because God is always putting you in a forward direction to what's the purpose here? Why are you here? What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, and I've heard the illustration. If you're always looking in your rear view mirror to see what's behind you, you crash. You
Yeah.
can't go forward if you're concentrating and your focus is on that little rear view mirror of what's behind you instead of what's in front of you. Bobby, I have heard you talk about the front pack and the backpack. Can you share that with the listeners?
So when I look at grief, when you're in that initial stage, when you have found out that your loved one is no longer here, it really is like a giant boulder, that is just now in front of your life, and it doesn't matter where you're at in life, you can't see anything, no matter how great your job is, no matter how great your family is, your spouse, your kids, wherever you're at, even if you're single, whatever it may be, but you cannot see past that boulder, and you feel like you're the Lone Ranger, and life has got lonely quick for you, and the whole world stops, and why are people happy? Why are people joking? Nothing's funny. And so, there's no timeline on that, but make that boulder, move, and for it to move to what I call the front pack. You can do life with a front pack. Most people have worn one, or at least seen somebody with one on. It's cumbersome and it's hard, but yet you can still move around and do things in life with it. And that's where you make that transition, where, God has brought, when you're ready and you're seeking the opportunities that God's given you for healing, and it can be through a family member, a friend, it can be a total stranger. It can be a book that somebody gave you, a godly book, whatever it may be. When God's giving that opportunity to move that boulder and him moving it with you, it becomes that front pack. And now you are able to do life a little bit better. And that can be 6 months, it can be 6 years for people, that front pack is where it's at. But the ultimate goal that I love to think about is the backpack. Getting that grief on your back and knowing that it will stay there the rest of your life. First, knowing that, because don't expect for that backpack to ever drop. You are going to be with that backpack the rest of your life, because your love for that person will never leave. So therefore, that grief will never leave that backpack. But again, we talk about you can do life with a backpack. You can do so many things with that on. And honestly, that reminder, that backpack, I think sometimes like Paul, Paul had lost his sight and he regained it, and it never was that great. But, I think of grief that way. Sometimes we have those reminders for reasons, because it made Paul a better person, and it made him, more cognizant of God's will in his life and the things that he needed to be focused on, not the things of this world. And that's what it does for us also. We should be the most compassionate people in this world for people who are going through whatever it may be, addiction, cancer diagnosis, the loss of a loved one. We should be the leaders of compassion, and those who, get in there, be transformational, not transactional in life. And that's where a person with a backpack should be, is in there in the trenches, helping people out.
Yeah. So asking and allowing God to move our grief from a front pack to a backpack.
Yes.
So we can function a lot easier and do what God still has called us to do and have a life of meaning and purpose. So, Gabby and Bobby, I want to give you a chance to talk about Sibling Lifeline. Gabby, you already mentioned it is so hard to find connections for
Mhm.
siblings, especially faith-based siblings. It's easier to find help for pet loss than it is sibling loss.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
as it's crazy to me.
Hmm.
Even when I first lost Becca and I would try to do some searches, it was like loss of and pet would be the first thing that popped up. And I'm like, are you crazy? What?
Hmm.
So, yeah. So you host retreats for siblings. How did this get started? What's it like?
Yeah, so I'll start it a little bit and then I'll let Bobby carry on the end of it. For me, in my perspective, I know I touched on it a little bit, but really just like being able to talk to somebody about my grief. And it really started for me from having Bobby as an outlet to talk about with grief was something that I didn't have in a sibling way. Like I didn't have anybody that could relate to me. And so we spent a lot of time talking about sibling grief and processing and how that felt. And then Bobby came to me and asked me if I wanted to co-facilitate some retreats with him, and I was absolutely honored that he asked me to do that with him. And so that's how I got introduced to it. But I know that Bobby has the other side of it, of how it actually got started with While We're Waiting. So I'll let him share that part of it.
Yeah, for the while we're waiting part, that's kind of a longer story than we have time for here. How I got involved with while we're waiting, but I did put it on our sibling lifeline, Facebook page. That story.
Mhm.
But if you fast forward to 2024, having known Brad and Jill Sullivan and Larry and Janice Brown for 10 years at that point, I really feel like God drove me over the last 5 years through, Wichita Children's Home, working with Kids Cope, being a grief counselor there with families, TAPS, Tragedy Assistance Program for survivors, for military families who have lost a loved one, and then just Make a Wish, being a wish granter, and several other outreach events that I've been a part of with the people that I work with in the military. All that to say, I feel like I took the best of those programs
Mhm.
um, and put it into the thought of what would a weekend look like for siblings for a sibling retreat. And so I put it all in there, fired that email off to the While We're Waiting founders and said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And having it out there at the refuge. And they were like, "Let's do this." They get questions from the parents all the time that come out there. What can we do for our siblings? What is there for our siblings? And
Mhm.
while they are, specifically for parents out there, they were gracious enough to allow us to come out there and provide something for
Yep.
siblings. So we've had 4 retreats this year. We've got 6 on the schedule for next year. What our retreat looks like is they come in Friday night. We give them a tour of the refuge and get them situated, and we have supper. We don't need an icebreaker because supper they're connecting already. And then that evening they share their stories, their sibling stories, not just how they died, but more importantly how they lived.
Yep.
And so Saturday, we have different grief activities that we walk through with them. We have different topics that they have chosen on the registration form that we walk through with them and talk about. And we have devotionals on Saturday night and Sunday morning because, like we said on our website,
Mhm.
Christ centered. There is no true healing without Him incorporated in the weekend.
Mhm.
And while they're there, they get a T-shirt, wristband, um, the My Jesus book by Ann Wilson, which deals with sibling grief. Great
Mhm.
book for those dealing with sibling grief, and they just get loved on, and they get the opportunity to connect with other siblings who understand exactly, may not be the exact circumstances of death, but they understand exactly what they're going through and can look into the eye of another person. No judgment, no awkwardness, just understanding. And that's something valuable that we see out of each of our retreats is God orchestrating the right people to be there at the right time with those connections, having more than just a purpose of grief healing, but also, like we talked about earlier, many people are dealing with fear, anxiety, depression, and many other things. And I feel like God, you know, helps during that weekend to find further healing and perspective in all those areas. Nobody's going to be fixed by the time they leave there, but God is going to help put them in a better place when they walk out those doors Sunday morning. And the connections that they continue to keep is astounding. I've
Mhm.
seen, that they connect on Facebook, on social media. I've seen a lot of them go on trips together.
Yeah.
We see it on Facebook. They've
Mhm.
That's
connected
awesome.
so well, that
Yeah.
they go do things together. So it's a
Mhm.
great opportunity that God's providing for siblings to come together, share their other sibling stories, and know that they are not alone.
Yeah.
They are heard, seen, and they are cared for.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And like you said, it's not going to fix them, but it sure does bring a measure of healing.
Yes.
I mean, it has to bring a measure of
Mhm.
healing in that journey. So how can people find out more about this and get a hold of you? And I'll just say to the parents, this is for 18 and older, right? So you
Yeah.
can't send like your 12-year-old there. And if you want your child to know about this, don't pressure and hammer them. Maybe either
Mhm.
just send them this episode or just have them check out the website. So what is that website and how do they get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of you?
I'm going to absolutely agree with the statement that you just made. That's something we tell people all the time. Is it's God's timing.
Mm-hmm.
You have to come to something like a sibling retreat whenever you are ready to be there and be present. I think is really important. So I'm glad that you touched on that. Our website is siblinglifeline.org, and it has all of our retreat information on it, the upcoming ones. There's also a little like ask me or like chat box
Mm-hmm.
on the website, and you can ask questions there. And those go to Bobby, and Bobby will always respond to those very quickly. He's very fast about it. And then we also have Sibling Lifeline, the Facebook page. So you can just see, different information and just find out more about us and retreats on there as well. And then something after all of the retreats that we have is the Sibling Lifeline retreat group. So you can join that Facebook group after you've left a retreat with us. And so you have a community of those siblings that have been to a retreat with us that you can continue to lean on for support and, as a resource to you in your healing. But like Bobby mentioned, it's so great to see when you open your Facebook and they're like in Florida together, or and it makes
Mm-hmm.
me so happy to see that they're continuing their healing journey, and that they took something that was meaningful to them that helped them throughout their grief. Bobby, is there any of that you want to add that I probably missed?
I think you covered it all. I mean, the registration
Okay.
button is on the website where you can register for an upcoming retreat and see the dates on there. So I think you covered it all, Gabby.
All
Well, I cover
right.
my bases.
Yeah. One quick question about the Facebook page. Is that a private Facebook page? Or there like questions that you have to answer, so that you guys can protect who's in there?
Yeah. So the Sibling Lifeline retreat
That's
is
separate. That's after you go to
separate.
a retreat, but
Yes.
but there is
So
a
that
sibling
one is a
Facebook
private
page.
group. You ask
Right.
to join, and either me and Bobby, obviously, if you've been there, we
Right,
accept your
right.
request. And then the Sibling Lifeline page itself, you can follow. And that is just our general information where
Okay.
we
So that's
post
a
about some of
public
the
page?
retreats. Yes, that's a public
Okay.
page that you can go to and see our retreats that we've had and just some of the things that we do. Um, so that you can learn a little bit more about us and what we're passionate about and what, retreats actually look like.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll make
Mhm.
sure
Yeah,
we have
Laura.
links to those in the show notes. What were you going to say, Bobby?
Laura, yeah, I was going to say I've no social media, never had social media until Sibling Lifeline.
Yeah.
Um, just the nature of my job, being in the military and being in intelligence, we just usually don't have social media. But for this one, God led me to make one. I'll just say
Yeah.
so. Also on that page, I put a lot of things that I do that we do
Mhm.
in outreach events, with work and personal volunteering. And the reason I put that on there is I hope that inspires other people to
Mm,
volunteer, get out there, and use the gifts that they've been given
Yeah.
to,
yes.
inspire and
Yes.
impact other people's lives.
Yeah.
So
Well,
Absolutely.
do either of you have any last thoughts or any scriptures you want to share?
there is one last thing I did want to say, and I shared with our entire 400-person group this morning is, sometimes in life, it doesn't always turn out the way that we want it to. And sometimes situations don't turn out the way that we would like for them to in life. And while that's true, even with the loved ones that we lose, we still got to remember that life can be beautiful. That even in our brokenness and depths of sorrow, that God still allows light and purpose to come into our lives,
Mm-hmm.
and an opportunity to honor and continue the legacy of that loved one. And just like I said, realizing that life could still be beautiful, life could still be purposeful. He has something for you to do and a way to honor your sibling or your child. And you've just got to be able to lock in with him, trust him, look for the opportunities, allow that good to flow into your life, and allow that purpose to, come back into your life for your family, for your friends, for strangers, and get out there, get after it, and make a positive and many times eternal impact with others.
Mhm.
So just knowing that isn't the end.
Yes, that's a great way to end it. So, thank you so much to both of you for joining me. And I'm glad we just got to have a full conversation and just really cover a lot of things. And Bobby, could I put you on the spot and just ask you to just pray over the listeners and just the whole, whatever God has on your heart to pray?
Lord, let's pray this evening for all of those out there who may feel alone, and may feel overlooked in their grief, that have lost a sibling, a child, anyone that is close to them, and may feel like their loss doesn't matter, or maybe they're not getting what they need. I pray that you would bring them the opportunity to feel seen, to feel loved, to feel cared for, and for somebody to maybe even just come into their life and just listen to them, to sit with them in their brokenness without judgment or awkwardness, and just bring them someone to listen and not to fix, but provide also maybe godly advice, godly wisdom that's only found in you. As we look out in this world, we pray for your hand in this world, and we look forward to your coming back to set things all straight and to bring us into that eternity where we all long to be. And let us not forget, again, our purpose here. Let us get out there and seek your will and get after what you've given us to do here while we still have time to call it our own. And at the end of the day, your will be done. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. I am absolutely positive there were some helpful things in here for you. And we were all given some things to think about when it comes to our other children who lost their brother or sister, no matter the age. I want to encourage you to pray about this and pray for your kids, because this is a vulnerable time for them spiritually as well. And while you're at it, thank God for the blessing of still being here for your other children. I know some of us in our head, we think nobody cares if I were here or not. I just want to go and be with my child who's gone, who's missing. But that's just not true. Your other kids need you. They love you. They want you. They need you. And while you're at it, maybe even say a prayer for those parents who don't have any other children here on this earth. They've either lost their one and only child or they've lost all of their children. Let's keep remembering to run to God, who is our anchor, our refuge, our comforter, and our strength. Keep running to Him for your kids, your spouse, or the other parent of your child, and for yourself. For those of you who do not get my weekly word of hope, I want to let you know something that I am so super excited about. The paperback version of the Bible's Grieving Parents is officially in process, and it should be available in the next few weeks. I'm aiming for mid-February. Now, this book has been carried in my heart for a long time, and seeing it move one step closer to being easily held and shared and gifted feels especially meaningful. So many grieving parents long to know that they're not alone, not only today, but throughout Scripture. And this book gently walks through the stories of parents in the Bible who knew the same deep loss we know. And just looking at their comfort, their understanding, the reminders of God's presence in grief that doesn't just go away, but it's wonderful to be able to look at grieving parents in the Bible and how did they go through life? How did they deal with it? And how was God faithful to them? How did they receive His comfort and hope? And so This book will be coming out, just giving you a heads up and letting you know I'm just super excited about this. You'll be hearing more about it. If you don't get the weekly Word of Hope, you can go to gpshope.org/hope. Just all we need is your name and your email address, and you'll start getting it every week. And it's easy if you don't want it anymore to unsubscribe. There's a link right on every single email to do that. So anyway, watch for more information because this book is coming. It is an ebook version right now, but the paperback is almost ready. I also want to remind you about our Patreon community. Now, this is a place where I show up in a much more raw and real way than I do anywhere else because you can't share it. It's not public. It's very private. And so sometimes, like in my quiet time with the Lord, I will just turn on the camera and share what's on my heart. Sometimes I've just been crying before Him. And it's a place where we can just gather and be who we are in the loss of our children. The other thing that it does is it helps us to keep this podcast going, because to be part of the community, you can either just come in at $5 a month as a seed of hope. You're just making sure that you're part of the community that keeps the podcast going. You can come in at a level of $10 a month, and what that does is it gives you reflection questions from every podcast. You can go in there, and there'll be a sheet in there, and it will take you just a little bit deeper into the podcast. If there's one that especially hits you, and you just want to really let God do a work in you, you can go in there and get those questions. Or if you have a support group that you're part of, you can use these questions in your support group. And then the final level is the community level at $20. And with that level, I meet with you on Zoom once a month. So you have personal access to me. And we'll talk about some of the podcasts and dig a little bit deeper in the podcast together. So if you are interested in being part of our Patreon community, both for yourself and the benefits you get from it, and also as a way to help us keep this podcast going, I don't want to put ads on this podcast. I just feel like it's too intimate. It's too sacred to have advertisers come on this podcast. I'd rather you support what's helping you and helping this so that other parents can get the help and hope that you receive as well. So if you want to check that out or be part of it, just go to patreon.com/GPSHope. It's Patreon, patreon.com/GPSHope. I'll also put a link to that in the show notes. I know some of you may hesitate to submit your child's birthday. You may feel like it's too personal, or maybe it just feels hard to put their name out there. Well, we share the birthdays here because speaking our children's names matters. Their lives mattered. And on the days the world may feel silent, we want to say your child is remembered here. You don't have to write a story or explain anything, just your child's name and birthday and your email address so that we can remind you to listen the week your child is shared with the other listeners. And also, if your child's name can sometimes be mispronounced, there's a place you can put in the pronunciation, because I do want to say their name correctly. It's not any, big thing where you got to fill out lots of stuff or give us lots of information. We only announce the birthdays the year that they are sent in. So this isn't something you lose control of. If you want your child's birthday shared the following year, just use the link Dave sends in the reminder email the week of your son or daughter's birthday. And if we don't hear back from you, your child is simply just taken off the list for the following year. Even though thousands listen to this podcast each week, only a handful of birthdays are shared. And that tells me that many of you may not realize just how welcome this really is and how much it blesses me to be able to personally bless you in this way. This isn't about spotlighting one family. It's about all of us standing together and saying these children are not forgotten. So with that, let's go ahead and share the children from this week's birthday segment. Ryan Hines was born on January 7th and is forever 27. Now these are twins. They died separately, but we have Luke Joseph Raymond was born on January 18th and is forever 30. Joshua David Raymond was born on January 18th and is forever 34. Jeanette Marie was born on January 19th and is forever 36. We celebrate the day these children came into the world and into the lives of these families. Like I said, if you would like to have your child's birthday announced, I would love to be able to do that. This is just a gentle invitation if you haven't done this already. I know it can feel vulnerable, but please know this. Sharing your child's name and birthday is never an imposition here. It's an honor. Speaking their name matters. So if you would like us to remember your child the week of his or her birthday, you can submit it, like I said, using the simple form at gpshope.org/birthdays. gpshope.org/birthdays. And there will also be a link in the show notes. You can just click on it and it will take you right there. This is a place where your child is seen, remembered, and spoken aloud. Now, before we close, I want to thank Bobby and Gabby again for sharing so openly and honestly today. Conversations like this matter because sibling grief is often overlooked, and yet it's a deep, complex, and lifelong grief just like ours is. If you are listening as a sibling who's lost a brother or sister, I just want to say I am so very sorry. I say that from my heart. And I want you to hear this clearly. Your grief counts. It matters. Even if it looks different from your parents' grief or maybe other of your siblings' grief, even if you felt pushed to the background, even if you didn't have words for it then or you don't have words for it now, you lost someone who helped shape who you are, and that loss deserves to be acknowledged. And if you are listening as a parent, as a bereaver, trying to support your other children while carrying your own heartbreak, please know this. You do not have to have all the answers. Your presence, your willingness to listen, your openness to letting your child grieve in their own way matters more than getting it right. Sometimes the greatest gift we give our children is simply permission to talk, to remember, to hurt, or giving them permission to not talk. But either way, to heal at their own pace and in their own way, even if their way brings us an added measure of pain, because I know watching our own children grieve is painful on top of the pain of our loss. It just is. It's the same way for the siblings. Watching us grieve is painful for them. Sibling loss changes a person forever, but love, that doesn't disappear. It continues in shared memories, in the way siblings carry one another forward, and in the quiet moments when grief is met with compassion instead of silence. Thank you for being here with me today, for listening, and for honoring both the seen and the unseen grief in your family. You are not alone. I hope you'll be joining me again next week. Until then, remember to hold on. Pain eases. There is hope.